My name is Pete Mellish. We're going to be talking around planning and designing your SharePoint 2010 Record Center and the compliance solutions around that. So I'm Pete Mellish, as I said. I actually work for Microsoft Consultancy Services in the UK. If you want to go and actually have a look at the services page, I've got this up here. I'm sure that we can get this slide content out to you later. We've also got our UK SharePoint blog, which we kind of maintain updated with various different SharePoint information. We've got quite a lot of SharePoint 2010 content out there already. And if you want to contact me with regards to anything that's within this presentation at all, please do so. I've got my email here, and if you want to come and actually have a chat to me, I'm on the Microsoft stand downstairs, which is in the top right-hand corner of floor 3. So what are we going to have a look at over the next hour? So it's all around SharePoint 2010 Records Management, obviously. So we're going to go and review these new feature sets, have a quick overview of what we're getting within SharePoint 2010. We're then going to take a quick overview of these features and how these feature sets are built with all the different features that we have within SharePoint 2010. Protecting enterprise context, so the way that we go around and actually generate records, different ways of generating records from where you were in 2007 and where we are now in 2010. Legislation and eDiscovery, so how do we plan for this? How do we actually go off and define holds against content? And then scaling your compliance solution, so going through the process of actually having a look at how much content that you want to store within your enterprise, how you can actually build from an initial record center and build that out into a much larger piece across your enterprise. So if we start having a look at the new SharePoint records management feature sets, so we've got records generation. We'll see that there's some differences from where we were in 2007 to where we are now. Where effectively we had a method of having an archive solution in 2007. We were limited to only using a single record center. Some of those limitations are no longer with us in the 2010 product, and we'll have a quick look and review of where we are now and how we can go about using that from a power user perspective. There's the eDiscovery and whole, which is actually leveraging the inbuilt search technologies and how we can actually go off, find content and place that on a hold so that we can then bring that back for legislative requirements. Auditing reporting, so looking around how we can actually generate audit reports and actually view what content is being updated and modified. And retention and expiration, again, we're looking at the in-place records management features and the new managed metadata services that help underpin all of the new technologies with regards to records management. So what we're going to do now is quickly walk through a review of the actual features that make up some of these feature sets. So we've got the content organizer, or the ability to route content as well. So the content organizer manages the content that gets placed within a record center. We have the unique document ID service, document sets, and how we can leverage those within the environment so that we can create a group of documents that are managed as a single entity. The ability to easily tag content from both within SharePoint and from the Office client, and the enhanced reporting and auditing features. So moving on to the content organizer. Content organizer is actually a list in SharePoint 2010. So it used to be kind of an XML structure, and you used to have a file plan that you generated through there. It had several limitations against that. What we now have is this content organize feature, which is great for you guys because you guys can go off, modify your file plans on the fly. You can generate multiple folder hierarchies that you can then go through and place records into the relevant location within your file plan when content arrives at the record center. And this is driven by metadata attached to content types. So what we'll do is we'll go through and actually see how we can generate these rules, and when content comes into the record center, we can then put it into the appropriate folders, and with that we can apply the appropriate information management policies. So we've got a unique document ID service within SharePoint 2010. So the ability to give a document a unique ID that can be tagged to that document so that that document ID can be created in one location, and then that document ID will then stay with that document across the entire document's lifestyle. So what we can see here is we can actually see that we've got the documents, and we can actually see the document IDs against each one of these documents, which is what we've got within this element here. Just move to the next slide. What we also see is this is the document management area, and if we know a document ID, we can actually select a well-known document ID number and actually do a search for that and bring back that document immediately. I mean, you could have millions of documents within a document repository. That's a fantastic way of being able to go off and actually get documents that you already know exist. Document sets, again, new feature within 2010. It allows us to group a set of documents together. So, for instance, you could look at, say, RFPs or various other document sets where you're going to have multiple documents that want to be managed as a single entity. We have this feature out of the box to generate these, and they fit within the record center as well. So we can use the send to features, which we'll have a look at the demo, to actually send a document set to the record center and have that managed in the appropriate way as we would with any other document. Ability from the Office 2010 client to be able to go through and tag content. There's also the ability within here to use the Manage Metadata service, so we can actually have a look at hierarchical metadata structures. Previously, in 2007, it wasn't the case that we could define these hierarchies. Now we have the ability to generate that hierarchy within the Manage Metadata service and leverage that within our records management and compliance solutions so that we ensure that the relevant metadata is applied to the relevant documents. So here we've got an example. We'll actually go through in the demo having a quick look at this and actually see kind of a hierarchical structure that we've got behind here and see how we can tag content appropriately. So there's also the ability to have a look at the compliance details of the document. Within that, we can get an overview of what's going on with that document. So from the screenshot that we can see here, you can actually see whether it's got any holds applying to it, what's going on with regards to the record status, whether it's declared as a record or not. And we've also got the ability to generate an audit log report for that specific record as well, which will take us into a set of Excel sheets that will be generated on the fly for us for that content. Okay, so we'll move on to our first demo, which is just going to go through some of these features, just have a quick review of where we're at and go through exactly what I've just been talking about. Okay, so if I just come to the home page, this is the new record center. So I don't know if any of you have been using the SharePoint 2007 record center. Obviously, it looks significantly different now. We have, again, within the record center, this document ID service. So I actually don't know an ID at the moment. I'm just going to quickly go and grab one. So assuming that you would know the actual ID of this document, what we'd actually do is have the ability at this level, 8, and if I just do find document, so it's actually gone off and found that document for me immediately via the ID of the document. Obviously, with hundreds of thousands of documents within this location, then that would be an incredibly powerful service. And then if we go into the actual content organizer rules, so when we're actually having a look at the content organizer, this is the way that we can start to generate our file plan within SharePoint 2010. So effectively, this is just a list, and we can actually generate new items within this list to define where we want content to be stored within our record center. If I just come through into here, so I'm just generating a new record within my document management space now. As you can see here, we've got an org location as a property within this content type. If I just save this document into the repository. So we now have management report 4 within our document. We can also see that it's been tagged with a unique document ID. What I'm now going to do is that at the content organizer level, we haven't currently got a rule for management documents. Now, if I just go in and show you one of the rules associated with a HR document at the moment. What we've got here is we can actually see that we have a content type associated with this. So we have a records content type. Obviously, I've got a demo record content type set up. But here we've got a property-based condition. This is taking org location, and if it is equal to HR, then it will perform the following rule. So what we're looking at here is that if it meets the following condition, then we want to perform the following action. In this particular case, what we're doing is we're actually sending this document into a HR folder within our records library. What I'm now going to do is I'm actually going to generate a brand new rule. All of this is all through the UI, so it can be done by anyone with the appropriate permissions. And within here, so I've given the actual rule a name. I'm then going to specify that it's a record content type. Then going to specify that it's demo1 record. And then I get the ability, as we saw with the HR record, to define where I want to place this. So I'm going to say that it's from the org location, that it's a management document. And then I'm going to specify the destination of where I want this document to be placed. So within this record library that we've already got configured for us, we actually got the ability just to select that management folder. Now that hierarchy could be 3, 4, 5 levels deep. Obviously you probably don't want to go too far with regards to the deepness of your file plan, just from a management point of view later on. But we don't have the limitation of being able just to place documents at a single folder depth. We can place that down within a hierarchy. Okay. So we've now generated a new management report. What I'm now going to do is go to the record library. And at the moment we have no management report within this record library. Sorry, management report 4 within the record library. I'm now coming back to a documents management area, so you can see from the URL these are 2 separate locations. So this one here, and then if I come to my management library, you can see that actually that's in a different site collection. If I now select on the drop down for the document, I'm now going to select a send to location. Now part of what I've configured here already is I've actually created multiple send to locations. This again was a feature that in 2010 we were very limited. Sorry, in 2007 we were very limited about what we could achieve here. We were able to hook up a record center and send documents to that single record center. What we can now do is define multiple ways of sending records to the record center, and we can also define that we send it to multiple record centers per web application. So actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move this document and link to it. So all we're going to do is retain a link within the current document management area whilst moving that content out into the record center. So we've now had an operation complete successfully. If I now come back to our management folder and just do a refresh against here, we can now see that that document has actually been placed directly within that folder. Okay. So if we now come on to protecting enterprise content and how we can actually, oh, one sec, do apologise. Protecting enterprise content. So how can you guys as power users come in and start to look at how you can achieve various different things within a compliance sense of actually managing the documents that you currently have, and how can you do things so that from SharePoint Designer you can start to manage whether something's whether something is actually a record or not. We'll run through several elements here. So we'll look at workflows, so how we can leverage the inbuilt workflows and extend those using SharePoint Designer. And what we can do here in SharePoint Designer is there's this new cool feature of being able to declare a record. Essentially, what we can do is there's a set of actions in SharePoint Designer. We can actually extend the current workflows and say, well, actually, once you've completed the current workflow, I'd also like you to perform the following action. So what we'd then do is we can use this declare record feature. It's also the new feature in 2010, which is in-place records management. So where were we before? We were looking at how we would manage content in an isolated siloed location. We now have the ability to look at content and management of records both in a document management area and also a silo location. Now it might mean that your organisation want to choose it so that they have either a mixture of both, or they either use the archival approach or the in-place approach. Really what I want to do now is just kind of give you a flavour of kind of like the two elements and kind of how they may be leveraged within your organisations. So, in-place records management, so choosing between the two, it works well within well-establishment areas. So, for instance, knowledge management. Effectively, if you're looking at these, then you need to have well-managed document areas because you're also going to have the management overhead at the document library levels about how you go off and manage policies within there. You're also going to have questions around what do you want to do with all of the documents within there? Do you want to use information management policies for everything within a specific library, or do you want it to just apply to only records? All of this is completely configurable, but it's just questions you should be asking yourself when you start implementing this. Archive, this is really the kind of more historic approach to the way that we've done records management in the past, where you have a siloed environment where you push content out to that location. Archives work well if you've got a well-structured file plan. So if you understand where your content needs to be, you need to be able to do reports against that. Then the archive approach will allow you to generate a specific file plan, be able to export that, and gives a centralized location to be able to actually find all of that content. So just going to go through another quick demo to kind of actually have a look at how we can generate some of these workflows using SharePoint Designer, actually using this declare record action. And additionally, we're just going to have a quick look at the in-place record feature as well. So I've actually already opened up SharePoint Designer and opened up the appropriate site that we've got here. Essentially what we were looking at is this root site collection that I've actually got open in this location. In case this doesn't work, here's what I prepared earlier as well, but I'm hoping what we'll do is actually go through the process of using SharePoint Designer, creating a copy of a workflow, and actually then adding in this additional action. So if I go to workflows, so within SharePoint Designer, I'm now going to copy and modify this workflow. So this is the standard SharePoint approval workflow. All we're doing is taking a copy of this, renaming it, say, just giving it a quick name here. So what we can see now is that we've actually got this approval workflow, and we can see the actual steps and actions that are associated with this already. What we can now do is add in a step to this workflow. And then we can actually add in the declare item as a record. Now, that's actually a recent action that I've already got within here. But if you actually have a look on the drop-down within actions, you can actually find that the declare record action is within here as well. What I'm now going to do is just publish this workflow up to the site that I've got open. Okay, so unfortunately I haven't got Visio installed on this machine. One of the things that we can also do is use Visio as a business tool, so you guys can start modeling out your workflows before you get into SharePoint Designer, import that Visio document, and that will then give you a template of the workflow that you've got, and then you can start to add in these actions like declare record. While that's just coming back, what I'll just do is just give you a quick demo of the new tagging content. So again, we're in our shared document library, our document management area here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to generate a new record from this demo record to content type. Or I'm not. Just going to try that again. No, that's not letting me. Okay, what we can do is just quickly upload a document and use that. Sorry about that, I don't know what's going on there. Okay. So I'm just going to select the content type explicitly and just doing an upload. And what you can find here is that we've actually got this office location element. I'm just going to bring this up. This is actually using the managed metadata service, and you can then see our hierarchical metadata underneath here. So you can actually start to see that we can actually select multiple areas and grouping, which obviously makes it much easier from a UI point of view. Select that for now. Okay. So it looks like we've actually published this workflow now. So what I'm going to do is quickly come back to our library, and I'm going to associate this new workflow against this library. I think that's because I've got, okay, I'll do a workflow association through here. Okay, so I'm now going to associate a new workflow. So all this is just adding in a workflow from within here. So add a new workflow. What we should now see is that we have the demo approval. I didn't give that the greatest name in the world, and delete that should say and declare record. We can work around that. Okay, so I had a few problems with setting this up the other day, so just in case, I have actually already associated this workflow. So I've generated it once before, so I'm just going to go through the process of doing that instead. So what we've got now is I'm actually going to start a workflow against this item. And we've got this approval and declare record workflow. If I then start this. So I'm just going to assign this to a user. Okay. Oh, I know what that is. Okay, so I've now assigned this to an individual user, so I can start this. Hopefully that'll come back in a second. What we'll then do is we'll actually go through and approve the task that's generated. And what we can see now is we've actually already got an in-place record here. I'm going to go through the process of actually approval against this item. And what we should see is, as you can see, there's actually an icon difference between the two items here. We've got this in-place report 1 and in-place report 2. Assuming this all works successfully, what we should see is in-place report 2 update to the new icon. Okay, so I'm now just going to approve this item. And if we now come back to our shared documents library, so we can actually see that we've generated a workflow within SharePoint Designer. And then what we've done is we've gone through the process of using that approval workflow, and also by doing that we've declared a record at the same time. I'm just going to upload a little bit more content here, and then we can actually go through and have a look at the in-place records management features. Browse for these. Okay. So we'll just upload these items now. So we now have some more content within the library. What I'll now do is if we actually select these items, we can see that we've now got this declare record element appear within the UI. If I now select declare record, that will then imply the record to that particular content. And we can actually see that I've added in the declared record field that gets added for us when we activate this feature. Just quickly come into the feature framework for this. So if you want to use this within your site collections, you will need to enable it. So as you can see here, we've actually already activated this feature. But for that actual to come up within the ribbon, then we've got to have a look at this and actually activate this against our site collections. Otherwise, we won't be able to actually utilize this feature. So next thing we're going to have a look at is legislation and eDiscovery. So within our records management solution, the primary focus of any records management implementation should be the upfront planning. So it's actually around gathering what your requirements are around your file plan, around what information management policies, so the retentions that need to be applied to those. Because if that's all set up right up front and the configuration of all those elements are done for you initially, then when it comes to these phases where you have to go off and there's some form of litigation happening, it makes this whole process so much easier. So the eDiscovery service, that uses the inbuilt search technology, which is absolutely fantastic, but that does mean that you need to be indexing the relevant content. So you need to be talking to your IT pros about this and say, we've got the following records in the following locations, and these need to be crawled, because if they're not, we're not going to be able to find this content when it comes to any legislative processes that we might go through. We've also got the new hierarchical file plan. So we'll have a look at this shortly. So we'll actually go off and generate a file plan report. So part of what we're doing when we were generating those content organizer rules, and as we generate files and folders within our records libraries, we're generating this file plan. And 2010 now has this ability to be able to go off and report against this. Not only does it report against the file plan, it also reports against the retention policies that are set up against those libraries as well. So again, we'll go through a quick demo of how we set this up and actually have a look at the UI for it. So we're back in our Record Center site now. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Site Actions, Manage Record Center, and we're going to Discover and Hold Records. So this is the eDiscovery feature that we're discussing. So we can actually do various different things here. So we don't have to just try and find content that's within the current Record Center site. We could be looking at other locations as well. So this could be across the entire enterprise that we're looking for the relevant content. What I'm going to do is just put in HR within here. And we can then preview the results of that. So what we're actually doing now is performing a search. Okay. In good old-fashioned demo terms, this isn't working as it was several hours ago. I do apologise about that. Unfortunately, that suddenly stopped working. Sorry, guys. So if I just quickly run through, what should happen at that point is that when we go to the preview results pages, we actually see the content that would be placed on hold. We then get several options about what we want to do with that. We can then keep it in place and add a hold directly against that content. So we can then define what hold we want to apply. So I'd actually already generated a demo hold against here, but it will just stop that content from being deleted or modified. We have another option as well. So we can actually copy this content to another location. So we keep it where it is currently, but we also send it off to a new location. So for instance, if there were hundreds of documents, you might want to put them into a specific location so that then any auditors that were coming in to actually look at this content, they could be sent to a single location. They could go through that repository to find all the relevant information. So we're now going to have a look at kind of scaling your compliance solution. So how do you go from a very small record center and move that upwards so that it's enterprise ready? So when we're talking about this, then we start talking about the managed metadata service. I mentioned this earlier on. It's the ability to actually manage taxonomies, but there's more to it than that as well. There's the ability for your IT pros to go off and create something called a content type hub. Now, what can then happen is you guys can come in and define the content types that you require within that location. So you can come in and say, well, actually, I need the following content types, and these are going to be my records content types. And against that, then what you'll need to do is then in 2007 land, you then have to get all those content types out to all the various different site collections so that the content types are aligned within your document management areas and also within your record center. This takes care of all of that for you. So what you end up with is a content type defined in a single location that is then replicated by this service. So we'll go and have a look at actually creating those content types, and I'll quickly go through the process of showing that replicating around. So we'll also have a look at the information management policies. These are how you define your retention and the actions that you need to perform on your records as you're going through this. In 2007, there wasn't the ability to define multiple retention policies. We now have the ability to do that. So we can say that for every year we want to review this finance document, but every 5 years we'll need to delete it. We can do that obviously against each different content type, and this can be defined either at a list level or a content type level. So as we can see within here, we're actually defining a stage within our policy, so we'll go through that process as well. So this is the ability within the managed metadata service to generate these taxonomies that I was talking about. So we've got shared taxonomy and the publishing of content types. So if we're just going through, I've got another demo just on how this works. So what I've generated here, again, it's just a normal site collection. I've called it Content Type Hub just to make it obvious exactly what it is. If I come into this and go into Site Settings, then go to Site Content Types. So I've actually already generated some content types that we've already been using within here. So what we've got is we've got the demo record 1 content type, demo record 2 content type, and I've also put this document set together as well. What we'll do is we'll just quickly go through the process of creating a new content type, defining some metadata against that, and then we'll see that actually appearing within the other site collections that we've got. Just to show you where we're at the moment. So this is the document management area that we've been working on so far. I'm just going to quickly run into the content types within here. So as you can see, this records content types, these already align. So we've already got alignment with our content type hubs. Again, now I'm in the record center that we were sending our content to. I'm just going to move down here. And again, we've already got these 3 content types within here. So we'll create a new content type. So we'll just call that demo record 3. I'm going to place it into the same location that we did previously. And, oh, that's the parent content type. So actually what we'll do is we'll just inherit from document content type. So we'll inherit from normal document. But what we'll then do is we'll place that within the records content type. Okay. So what we've now got is we've got a new content type. It inherits from a document, so it's going to have all the same properties that a normal document would have. And what we're now going to do is we're going to actually define some metadata against here. So I've already created some columns. You might have seen these already, but I'm just going to add both of these into this particular content type. This is warning us because the office location is only supported within the 2010 client, I believe. But if I then select OK, we can still add that into the content type. OK, so we've now generated a brand new content type. It's all through the UI. This is all stuff that you guys can do. And what I'm then going to do is there's actually some automated processes that run in the background that would normally do this. I'm just going to kick them off. And then what we should see is those content types filtering through to those other locations. And then that's when we can start using them within our content organizer rules or be actually generating content within document management areas from them. So we've got several jobs that organise this. So I'm just going to run the content type subscriber job. Run that now. And just quickly run the content type hub job as well, actually. Jobs. What we should be able to see. Oh, one sec. I'm actually just publishing this content type, so there was a step I forgot there. So part of creating the content type is you actually need to enforce that you've published this content type. So part of the content type screen within Manage Publishing for this content type. I'm just going to quickly run those jobs again just to ensure that they do push across the rest of the site collections within our demo here. So if I just quickly come back to okay. That's not pushing through, unfortunately. What we should see here is that actually these record content types get updated. I'll just quickly try that job again. Essentially, this would normally be a background task that's just running overnight, and we wouldn't have to be forcing it in this way. Just quickly going to run at the job. Everything's saying succeeded. No, it's still not coming through. Apologise about that. What we should see at this point, as I said, is that actually this content type comes through. That's exactly how these content types are actually placed within this library as well. So we do have a centralised management facility for this. If you guys do want to see this working, I'll find out what's not working against this demo. As I said earlier on, I'm actually down in the Microsoft area on floor 3. So if you do want to see any of this stuff working, please do come down. I'll be able to give you a demo of that. And just to wrap up, really, so we'll just go through some of those elements we've just discussed. So it's the integrated governance and the ability around that so that we can actually do the information management policies. Works on a variety of SharePoint objects, so it's not just the documents, where you can actually start looking at various other ones. So there's some new content types out the box in SharePoint 2010 for digital asset management. We can use it against those as well. Essentially, we're just leveraging what people are used to within the UI. So it's this familiar and easy user interface. It's configurable to your organizational needs. We can have multiple record centers now. We can use the in-place records management features. And some of the key features that underpin this are the metadata publishing features within the Managed Metadata service. So essentially, we're looking at a far, far richer environment than we were in 2007. Again, apologise about some of those demos not working as expected. If you do want to come down and have a look at them working properly, please do. And if you guys have got any questions, quite happy to take those now. Yes, sorry. So you can version against that, so you can use those in-place records management features. So you can actually have versions against it, and it will tell you when it's been declared a record. So you can continue to use the record as it is. However, you will notify that there will be multiple versions against that. Does that answer your question? Yes. Excellent. Sorry.
What restrictions are there now on the number and scope and location of record?
That's a great question, actually. So within 2010, in theory, it could be vast because you don't necessarily have to have these in the same farm either. So you could have multiple farms configured for record centers as well. You could define records as in-place records in certain locations where that's appropriate, for instance, policy documents. So you might have HR policy documents that tend to get updated quite a lot. You might have another set of documents that don't get updated almost at all, and they need to be frozen in time at that point and maybe kept for 20, 30 years. So it really does just depend on where you want to start structuring this and how you want to architect the solution. You could potentially have hundreds of millions of documents across your enterprise, maybe using multiple farms to support that, but you would still be able to have vast sums of documents within here.
If you have a site and subsites, and you would like to actually record the subsites themselves as a whole, can you do this as a record or not? So that you keep in the record center the idea of subsites and all the information that was kept in the subsite?
So you essentially want to keep the site taxonomy associated with the, okay. You wouldn't do as it currently stands. So if you wanted to do that, I'd probably suggest looking at an in-place strategy rather than an archive strategy. So obviously you've got the benefits within the archive strategy of the file plan reports and all the various elements that come along with that. But if you want to keep that structure with regard to a site taxonomy, then in place might be a way to actually overcome that challenge.
This unique document ID.
Yeah.
Could I get that from a different system, which is bespoke in-house system, which you have to get rid of legacy system? Unique ID is already in.
You wouldn't be, so the document ID system doesn't allow for that. You could bring across, say, a prefix. So the way that document ID service works is that at a site collection level, you define what you want the prefix to be, and then the document ID service works out the rest in the background for you. But if you were looking at maybe importing that, what you could possibly do is use the original metadata against those documents, and then look at maybe using the same prefix, but then having a new ID generation post that. So that, essentially, no is what I'm saying, unfortunately. Oh, sorry.
Usually when you do save as, it gives you the record number, record ID.
Well, when you've actually downloaded the document.
Yeah. When you go on a document and then decide to save as, it presumably gives you the record ID at that stage.
Oh, you mean save it as into a different location? No, it won't actually. So there's a doc properties element within a Office document, and what that actually does is it downloads at that point. So if you would have issues if you wanted to then put that back up into a completely different SharePoint infrastructure or a different farm for that matter, but it would be able to retain that ID if you were putting it back into your same infrastructure, because it would be downloaded into the doc properties element, which would then be promoted back up if you then uploaded it.
Does this comply with any particular standards?
There was talk about with DoD Chapter 2 compliance. Unfortunately, in the end, we didn't actually make that, so that it's not actually compliant at the moment with any specific standards now. Oh, sorry.
When you're creating the routing rule, is it just the metadata for that content type that's available in terms of doing the switch off?
There's various different things you can do with those routing rules. So you can use, there's obviously the metadata associated with the content type. What was it that you were trying to achieve?
It's a very generic question.
Okay. So essentially, yes, it would be those that in the document. However, you do, as I was saying before, about this promotion of metadata fields. So you can take, say, properties that were in a document associated with a content type and then upload that. So it would end up in the content type, those metadata fields, and then that could then be used for routing. So that might be a way around that.
I looked at this quite a long time ago, 2007, so I can't remember the specific. I remember being frustrated in what I wanted to do, there being the facility there. But say, for example, the document came from a specific location,
Right.
or that it was posted by a specific user, for example.
Okay. So from a user point of view, then you could probably handle that. So if it came from a specific location, so for instance, if that was a different web application, you can define different CENT locations. So if it was over in that location, you say, well, actually, I don't want it to go here. I want it to go over there. So there are things that you can leverage in order to supply that.
So there are scenarios that we would have. I mean, you can do it because you can support multiple record centres, but the idea was you'd have more than one record centre, and you'd have a variety of document management locations within the same web application, effectively, and each one would be able to post documents into one or more record centres, but then depending on which record centre was receiving which document from which document management, it would do something different with it.
Okay.
If you see what I mean.
There will be a way around that. You could actually create enforced metadata at a library level and say that I'm over here, and then this one, and you define a library with some enforced metadata over here that says I'm over here.
I think this is where we get to the problem, because the document can only be one content type. But if you wanted it to go to multiple targets, then you might want to flag different metadata, say you need different content types.
What I was thinking is what you can do at a library level is you can define hidden fields. So what I was thinking was use a hidden field with a default value, which would be free text. You define that free text value, and then that means that the user wouldn't be able to actually modify that. So they would then be able to use a CENT location. It'd be metadata driven still, because that would still be on the content type. And when it actually gets up to the routing location, then it can be routed appropriately. Thank you very much, guys. Again, if you've got any questions, please do come and see me. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers.